Hello, and welcome to the Dreamkeepers Faction War. I've been tinkering with a roleplay system on the side for a few years, and I think it's to the point where we can give this a try. So that is what we are going to do. I'm going to go ahead and make a quick video summary of every stage of the process. So anybody that's kind of interested in this, just watch the videos, you can see how it works, and then if you want to go ahead and join in later on when we open it up to the public, you're welcome to do so. And at the end of this video, there's actually going to be a walkthrough of how you can create your own character. So it's pretty easy, and yeah, if you're interested, stay tuned, and I'm going to kind of lay out what the Trinity roleplay system is and why I developed it. So, why did I develop Trinity? I really enjoy roleplay, but I don't like the massive amount of time investment that it kind of seems to require. I like being in character, I like going on adventures, I like living through a story, but I really didn't enjoy it when every time a battle comes up, it's like, boom, the rulebook lays down, it's huge, you gotta flip through 37 pages and figure out, okay, how exactly does this work again? And it involves math. It involves math homework to see what the outcome of a battle is, or sometimes even what the outcome of a single gesture is. And for people that are really, really veterans of roleplay, they probably don't even see that anymore. They probably can just handle it and it's no problem. But for casual people like me and for other people that maybe aren't hip deep in roleplay already, that's kind of an impediment. So I wanted to develop something that just took a whole lot of that work out of roleplay. I wanted to make it easy. So I wanted to get rid of a lot of the rules, make something really light and really streamlined and fun. I've seen roleplay go in the opposite direction online too. What I've seen there is people they'll get together in a forum and they'll just do a roleplay with no rules whatsoever. So they'll just basically type out, here's what happens with my character, and it's 5 paragraphs, and then the next person jumps in and they're like, here's what happens with my character. And that can be cool, but that's not really so much playing a game as it is almost like writing a novel, but writing a novel with 5 other people. And there's also a bit of dedication that requires also. You kind of have to be at least decent at writing. And, and if the other people you're playing with are a little clunky, it's not that much fun to read. And B, it can require a lot of reading. To stay caught up on what's happening in these, just totally text-based roleplays, you have to read, entry after entry and, go through these forums. And so it's actually kind of a prohibitive amount of work to try to, stay up to date on it. And then every time you need to write out your own entry, you have to sit down and you have writing work to do. So it's not so much playing a game as it is, writing and authoring. And that's fine, but I was interested in trying to develop something where it's still a game. You can get in there, you can play, you can be in character, and you don't have to sit down and do a bunch of math, but you also don't have to sit down and be a novelist. So hopefully Trinity is something that will kind of bridge that gap. The other thing about Trinity that I'm optimistic about is I'm hoping this system will actually allow potentially hundreds of people to play together in the same game, because that would provide having one unifying story that number of people are participating in. That's a lot of community involvement, and it provides a nice singular context that can kind of tie people together, and it gives you a good platform, common reference points when you want to talk to other people in that community. But within that story, within those hundreds of people potentially playing, you're still in a small team unit. So it's still you and a small, close-knit group of friends going through it together. And if we can get that dynamic to actually work out the way we've designed, that'd be really cool. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to trying it out. Here is the overall kind of bird's eye view of how Trinity is supposed to work. First of all, Trinity simplifies down your character stats to just 3. Fitness, intellect, and social. Obviously, fitness is body-based kind of athletic abilities. Social is your ability to influence others or your ability to lie or perceive lies. And then intellect involves, how intelligent your character is, whether they can operate machinery well, that sort of thing. So within those 3 base stats, you can learn new skills and level skills up. So there is room for character growth and that sort of thing. The Trinity system includes the ability to form teams. So if you have a group of characters that are all trying to get the same thing done, they can form a team. And yeah, there's also the ability to die in Trinity. Because it's not really that much fun to go through a story where there's not that much at stake. So there has to be risk involved. It has to be possible for your character to die. So the point is not necessarily to live as long as possible and like level your character up to a godlike level, because it's not even really possible. You can get stronger, but you can't get ridiculously strong in Trinity. The goal is more to play through an interesting story and see what happens with your friends. So that's the basic setup of Trinity. A very simplified down stat system, but it still provides like a concrete system for simulating the outcomes of events and the outcomes of what happens when you match up against opposing characters. Now, as for how the system's going to work, we have a Discord server set up, so it mostly plays out in Discord, and that's also going to allow a lot of cool things where like you can see what your own team is talking about, but you can't see what the enemy team is talking about. And there is a lot of player versus player stuff going on here, because it is called Faction War. So it's going to be the Troika is one faction you could join. You could join the Nightmares. You could join the Neon Knives or the Shock Troopers and the Central City Authority. And, you might have varying numbers of people on your team, but it's going to be all these characters and all these factions with a different interest in the story, and then they all go head-to-head in the end. So how exactly does that work? How do we mesh all this together in a way that kind of makes sense? Well, one thing is, the Faction War Trinity system is going to be organized into story arcs, and one arc is supposed to last about a month. So after you play through one arc, if you decide, you know what, that was fun, but I need to take some time off, boom, that's it. That's another thing that I kind of like about this Trinity system is, if you just want to play for one round, one arc, or what have you, you can play an arc, and then you can be done. It's not like you join the system and you must play forever and ever and ever, and it never ends. It does have an end. And then within the arc, what happens is there's 4 basic episodes. In the first episode, each individual character has their own challenge that they've got to overcome. In the second episode, you link up with your teammates, and you guys kind of have it out over who's going to be the leader, who's not going to be the leader. The third episode has all the different teams in your faction, and basically it's going to determine which team is the team that represents your faction in the climax. And episode 4 is the climax. The leading team from every faction will go head-to-head, and then in episode 4, in the climax, the fate of the story will be revealed. So that's basically how it works. Four episodes, and then each episode, every character has to just make one dice roll, except the climax. You might be rolling a little more based on how the matchups shape up. So that way, it's something where even if you're busy, if you're a student, if you've got a job, you can go ahead, you can play in a story arc, and as long as you make like your dice roll that you need to make within the time frame of a few days, it's no problem. You can stay caught up. And then in the Discord, the moderators will have one chat that's dedicated to updating major story events that are relevant. So that way, if you don't have time to necessarily catch up on every single person's like blog or like this huge chat from the team, if you just look at the overall event log that the moderators have up there, boom, you're up to speed. You know what's kind of happening in the story. You can get in and you can play. Now, this system might flex as time goes on. I really hope that the moderators and the players together will decide, hey, here's the parts we like, here's the parts we don't like, So it should be something that hopefully gets better as people play it more and find ways to make the experience better. But for now, that's kind of the way we're going to approach it. 1 month-long story arc, and inside that story arc, there's 4 episodes, and that way things are spaced out so that you can still play, you can impact the story, you can have an effect, you can do things with your teammates. But at the same time, it's not like you have to spend all day every day. As long as you make sure to clock in at the right day, as long as you make sure to clock in during the right time frame for your dice roll, and I mean the time frame might be a few days, you're good to go. And beyond that, if you want to do any extra role play just for fun, there's nothing stopping you. Alright, so if all that stuff sounds interesting to you, let's create a character. If you want to create one for yourself, go ahead and play along, and anyone that wants to apply to be a mod in the test game, go ahead and actually create the character that you want to use now. So, character creation, and you can kind of compare this to the character creation process in other roleplay systems to see, how much nicer and faster this is. character creation. There are 6 steps. Step 1, create your character. Name, beliefs, backstory, personality, etc. That's pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to create a character here just to give you guys an example. We're going to call him Finnegan, and he has a backstory. Step 1 done. Step 2, set your base stat categories. Now, when you're setting your base categories, every player gets 5 points to distribute amongst fitness, intellect, and social. The maximum level of any category is 3, and the minimum level of any category is 0. You can use up to 2 of these points on awareness, which is sort of a free-floating side skill. Awareness starts out at 1 by default. Everybody has 1 awareness, and the maximum for awareness is going to be 3. So, how's Finnegan going to shape up? Well, I feel like awareness might be handy for him, so I'm going to go ahead and take one of my 5 points, plunk it in awareness. Now he has an awareness of 2, so maybe he'll have a better shot at detecting traps before he walks into them, that sort of thing. So, Finnegan has an awareness of 2. I'm going to take another point and drop it in fitness, because who knows, he might need to do some things. And I don't want him to be too generalized, because I might not have an easy time getting people to recruit me on their team if he can't do anything really good. So I'm going to put his social at 3. So that's 1 point into awareness to take it from the default 1 up to 2, 1 point in fitness, 3 in social. That's all 5 points. So for intellect, Finnegan is going to have a big fat 0. He is not the sharpest tool in the shed. All right, so that is step 2. Step 3, set your traits. Now, every base stat has a unique trait for your character. And it's something that actually does have mechanical relevance in the way the game plays out, so you want to be kind of careful when you select your trait, because sometimes a trait can help you, but sometimes a trait can also be an impediment to you. So, for fitness, what should Finnegan's trait be? I think I'm going to make his fitness trait hard to handle, squirmy. So, he is officially a squirmy guy. Finnegan's kind of squirmy. So, when might that hurt me? Like if he's trying to hit on a waitress, maybe the mod might tap that to be an impediment. He's squirmy, he doesn't look that attractive. But if there's someone trying to wrestle him to the ground, being squirmy could be an advantage, because that might give him just the edge he needs to get away. So, for social, what should his traits be? And now, traits do need to be kind of specific. Like, for social, you don't want to just say, my social trait is, I'm sociable. It's like, no, that's what the general trait already is. So, Finnegan's social trait is going to be, eye for a bargain. That's his social trait. And his intellectual trait, why don't we say he's superstitious? Finnegan is superstitious. So now I have 1 trait for each of my base stat categories. And that's step 3, done. Now, step 4, select your power level. Because in Dreamkeepers, every character has a power. And now, you can't just declare yourself at level 6, the highest level, without some kind of a drawback. So the higher your power level is, the fewer skill points you're going to start out with. And so if you start out at power level 6, then you're only going to have 3 skill points. Whereas if you start out at the minimum power level of 2, you get like 18 skill points. So you have a lot of skills if your character has not been relying on a power for their whole life. Especially since Finnegan is really dumb, I kind of feel like I want his power to be up there a little bit so that in a pinch he might have something to fall back on. We're going to give Finnegan a power of 4. And I'm just going to make up what the power is. Concussion orbs. Like maybe he can generate these orbs where he tosses them out and then they explode with like a concussion, like a flashbang or something. So power level 4. And based on the little chart here for character creation, at power level 4, I will have 9 skill points that I can spend. And that brings us to the next step of character creation. Step 1, your name. Step 2, your base stat categories. Step 3, your traits. Step 4, select your power level. Step 5, spend your skill points purchasing skills from a list, or invent and clear new skills with the moderators. So I haven't made the skills list yet. I'm going to get to work on that. And if you have a skill that's not on the list that you really fall in love with, if you submit that idea for a skill to the moderators and they think that it's distinct enough and relevant enough to be a skill, then they might just add it to the list and it'll be accessible for everybody to learn. So, how do you add skills? Well, if I've got 9 skill points, that means I can distribute them in different skills under my base stat categories however I want. So, for example, under fitness, I would like to have melee combat be a skill, in case he gets, up close and personal. We'll put that in at level 1, so I just spent 1 skill point. Let's give him a skill of throwing, because if his power is like concussion orbs, it'd be cool if he could throw them with a little bit of accuracy. So we're going to give him throwing, and why don't we have that skill be level 2? So I spent 2 skill points on throwing. And I'm going to put in a level 0 skill for parkour, so he can jump around and look all cool. But then, since it's level 0, it basically has no impact on the rolls, so I don't even need to spend a skill point on that. You can put as many level 0 skills on your character as you want. They just don't really do anything unless you use it enough times and level it up. So I basically just put that in to demonstrate that you can add level 0 skills, but it doesn't really mean anything, and it does not use up your skill points at the start here. So I have a level 1 melee combat, level 2 throwing, 3 skill points have been used in fitness. In social, that's kind of his specialty, so I want to bulk him up there. So I'm going to give him the skill of lying at level 3, and the skill of reading intent at level 2. So that's 5 skill points spent in social. And under intellect, let's give him lockpicking at level 1. So that is all 9 skill points. They're all spent, and that's how you distribute your skill points. Let's see, what's the last step? Last step, write in any starting inventory items, and you have to approve it with the mods to make sure that it's realistic and fair for your character to have those inventory things. And that's it. That's done. You have created a character. It didn't really take that long to articulate it here, so hopefully this kind of introduces you to just how light and fast and accessible this mechanical system really is. It's not a gigantic obligation, it's not a huge pile of homework, you can just do it, and it's quick and fun, and yeah, so the next video, we'll have an update on how things are coming together. Maybe we'll have our list of moderators that we can introduce you to and some of their characters, and I'll walk through how to start out with episode 1 of a story arc.